Mr. President,
Senator from Kentucky.
I ask unanimous consent that we dispense with the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I call up my amendment number 1506 and ask that it be reported by number.
The clerk will report.
The senator from Kentucky, Mr. Paul, proposes an amendment numbered 1506.
Mr. President, my amendment would pay for the emergency funds for the coronavirus. I think that we should not let fear or urgency cause us to lose our minds and cause us to act in an irresponsible fashion. I, for one, have looked at foreign aid over the years as welfare that we send to other countries that really is not particularly in our best interest anyway. If you follow foreign aid through the years, what you find is that it goes from middle-class folks in rich countries to rich people in poor countries. Frankly, people enrich themselves at our expense. They steal our money. The Mubarak family now is worth billions of dollars in Egypt that they have skimmed off the top. The history of this throughout the third world is legion and is well known. My amendment would basically say that we would take the $8 billion from the welfare we give to foreign countries and we would pay for this. I see no reason why we shouldn't do this. I'm not opposed to the emergency funding, but I think the emergency funding should be gotten from elsewhere in the budget, and that's a responsible way to act. Every day, people across the country confront unexpected expenses. We budget, we plan, but things happen. When they do, we adjust and plan accordingly. And sometimes we confront an expense that is not only unexpected, but urgent. That's where we find ourselves today. We want to respond and make sure we are providing resources to our medical professionals and researchers. That's important, and I fully support that, which is why we should use this moment to ask ourselves at a moment like this whether it's really necessary to keep spending on wasteful things. If we don't consider this now, when will we ever consider this? We want an all-hands-on-deck response, so we should be cutting out waste and moving those resources into something that's of more immediate concern. So if the coronavirus is of immediate concern, and I think it is, let's address that situation now, but let's do so by taking money from less urgent things and taking money that we are wasting overseas, taking money that is often stolen by third world dictators. That's exactly what I'm proposing today. We have the money. We don't need to borrow more money. We just have to start setting our own priorities. For example, we shouldn't spend another dollar developing a foreign economy this year. That spending should be stopped and the money should be spent here to buy supplies, to help expedite research, and to support our communities. The funds I'm proposing to keep at home have been used abroad for all kinds of unnecessary and wasteful things. I'll give you a few examples. We send U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund kids from Pakistan to go to space camp in America. We spend money combating student truancy in the Philippines. We've been funding the Peruvian Green New Deal. We actually send money to help deported illegal immigrants start up businesses in El Salvador. What business is it of the U.S. taxpayer to be funding small business in El Salvador by people who broke the law trying to break into our country? It's insane. I think this money would be better spent at this point in time on research on coronavirus and response to this epidemic should it become worse in our country. The list doesn't stop there. I don't know why we can't agree to spend this money on a coronavirus instead of spending it abroad. We spend over $50 billion a year in Afghanistan, building their roads, building their schools, trying to create a nation where there really is no nation. We need to spend that money here at home. Besides, it's the law. We have a law called PAYGO, or Pay As You Go, which is supposed to require Congress to pay for new spending. It's been around for a couple of decades, and yet we've broken the law thousands of times. What do? They see something they want. You know, they're a kid in the candy store and they want to spend, they want to give you free money. And so they just ignore the law. So what happens every year, they exceed the pay-as-you-go. They don't do the thing they're supposed to do, which is offset this with a spending cut. And they just write a small little note in there saying, we've agreed to ignore the PAYGO rules again. That's what will happen in this case. The other way they ignore the rules on PAYGO is they declare things an emergency. So everything's an emergency. And the thing is, well, you say, well, what would we do if we didn't have this, if it weren't an emergency? Well, we already spend billions of dollars and have spent billions of dollars over years preparing for epidemics. We fund the CDC, we fund the NIH. There's a lot of money out there. But once again, I'm not against giving additional money, but we should just make a decision. We should be mature people and say, oh, we're just not going to print up the money or borrow it from China. We're going to take it maybe from something less necessary. When we don't want to pay for new spending, we just simply waive these rules on PAYGO. We declare the spending to be emergency and they get around the requirement. That's how we got a $23 trillion debt. We actually borrow $2 million every minute. And people say, well, we got to do something. People are running around crazy. We got to do something. Well, who's going to do something about the $23 trillion debt? Do we not have 5 minutes to take a vote? In 15 minutes, we'll be taking this vote, and people could simply vote and say, we're not going to borrow more money. We will take the money from somewhere else in the budget that is less pressing. But mark my words, there's no fiscal responsibility up here among either party. It will be a small minority of us who will say that this funding should be offset by taking it from somewhere else in the budget. In times of emergency, Congress scrambles to put together new spending, but we should be working just as hard to pay for the cost that comes with emergencies. Which is a higher priority, spending millions of dollars to stabilize the supply chain of medical supplies and treatments here at home, or spending millions on international arts festivals? Which is a higher priority, spending millions to train frontline medical professionals here at home on how to limit exposure to the coronavirus, or spending millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, paving roads in Afghanistan? My amendment gives us a chance to set priorities. We can support our communities and give our medical system the resources it needs, and we can do it without adding to the debt. That's the responsible way. My amendment would do exactly that, and I encourage other senators to consider fiscal responsibility. Thank you, Mr. President.